Hey, how are you? Yeah.
in a big crowd tonight.
Bummer. Apparently, like, NASA personnel are at the State Theater for some Webb
Yeah,
telescope
Mike's there.
something.
Yeah.
And the line
Yeah.
is down the street.
Yeah.
What?
Somebody
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
sent me a message. I was like,
From the
we-
Webb.
I wish we were watching NASA scientists.
It's like, we're the city commission.
No
How come
offense
we
to
don't
staff.
have
According
on,
to
like,
my
email
computer, it
lists?
is now 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get our special
That's
meeting
right.
started.
Be here otherwise.
First of all, I want to welcome those at home who are watching us tonight. I think I could find something better to do on a nice summer night, you know, especially if it's going to be cold tomorrow, and those that have joined us here tonight. Some folks were forced to be here tonight, but that's okay, like us. We took our break earlier, so here we go. Before we begin our meeting tonight, we begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gathered is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We want to thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. Also, before we begin, you know, Cherry Festival is over. I think everyone had a great week. It was great weather. Yeah, there were a lot of noise and a lot of airplanes and just a lot of things that we have year after year. But I want to give a special thanks to the city crews that were out all week, especially our police and fire departments that were stationed at many of the events, and especially the important ones, manning a command center all week. But also the Public Works Department, who did what they needed to do during the day and made sure the trucks were in the right place when we needed parking blocked and things such as that. So to the city crews, thank you for making it such a great week for everybody, and it's much appreciated. With that, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Ms. Colburn, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do want to apologize to everybody really quickly. I can't seem to log into my iCompass. I'll be using my phone. So
Okay.
I'm not being rude. It's just an
Just hide it on
alternative.
the keyboard or your
Yeah, right.
Okay. With that, roll call, please.
Yes, and good evening, Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell. Commissioner Colbert.
Here.
And Mayor Lewis.
Here. Okay, announcements from the interim city manager.
I just have one this evening. We have received a few complaints via email regarding a Facebook post from one of our local businesses. It has been received. I just want to let everybody know that it has been received. We don't need any more emails. And it has been referred to the city attorney's office.
Okay. From the city clerk, please.
Yes, I've got meetings to announce for this week, the week of July 10th. On Tuesday, July 11th at 7 p.m., the Board of Zoning Appeals will meet. That'll be in the commission chambers on the second floor of the Governmental Center. On Wednesday, July 12th at 11 a.m., the Mobility and Parking Advisory Board will meet, and that's in the second floor committee room of the Governmental Center. And finally, with respect to meetings, also on Wednesday, July 12th, but at 7 p.m., the Joint Recreational Authority will meet, and that'll be at the Historic Barnes Park at 1500 Red Drive. I wanted to also just remind folks, if they're interested, that we have a weekly e-newsletter called the Bay Brief, and you can subscribe by visiting the city's website. And that's all that I've got for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As mentioned earlier, this is a special meeting, so the only thing we'll be addressing are the topics that are on the agenda. So we'll start from there. Topic number one is consideration of authorizing and confirming a purchase order for unleaded gasoline for city operational use, a routine matter that would normally show up on our consent calendar. So I would glad to entertain a motion. I think they'd like to have some fuel. Yes.
I'll make a motion that the interim city manager be authorized to issue a confirming purchase order in the amount of $22,281.91 to Crystal Flash of Traverse City for 10,004 gallons of lead-free gasoline with funds available in the garage fund.
Support.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public have any comments on this one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Thank you. Next is our yearly or one-year extension of agreements and a subsequent 5-year contract with the Area Public Schools, Northwest Education Services, Northwest Michigan College to provide the service of collecting their taxes. This is pretty much routine, so this would probably also show up on your consent calendar, but it needs to be happening, seeing how we're getting ready to collect a few of those. So, yes.
I'll take a stab. The mayor and city clerk execute an amendment to the agreements with Traverse City Area Public Schools, Northwest Education Services, formerly known as TBISD, and Northwest Michigan College for the collection of summer taxes, which would extend the agreement through calendar year 2022. That doesn't seem right.
It's catch up.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
sorry. With such amendment subject to approval as to its substance by the interim city manager and by its form by the city attorney. And further, that the mayor and city clerk execute a 5-year agreement with Traverse City Area Public Schools, Northwest Education Services, formerly known as TBISD, and Northwestern Michigan College for the collection of summer taxes, with such agreement subject to its approval as its substance by the interim city manager and as formed by the city attorney.
Support.
Okay. We have a motion and support. Anyone from the audience wish to address anything here? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Next is the reestablishment of an ad hoc committee for, I guess your 6 months are up or about up, so you need to.
They are up. We had to cancel our last meeting.
So
so.
we need to yeah, and we just finished 2 of our last meetings. So anyway, for the complete streets policy. So I'll be glad to entertain a motion to reestablish the committee for another 6 months.
I'll make a motion that the City Commission Ad Hoc Committee on Complete Streets Policy be reestablished, consisting of members Mayor Pro Tem Amy Shamrow, Commissioner Tim Werner, and Commissioner Mai Stanley, with Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow as chair, with the committee to expire January 8, 2024.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Anyone from the audience like to address this? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Next, now we'll have a discussion. We have consideration authorizing a contract for preliminary design services for a design-build preliminary treatment improvements and UV disinfection improvement. Sir?
Before we turn it over to Mr. Kruger, I just want to start off, appreciate the council allowing us to have this on as a special meeting versus a study session. We have a pretty large project that's coming together, and I've asked Art and Mark and their team to put together a PowerPoint to try and make sure that the council or the commission is fully aware of what this project entails. It is a bit time sensitive, which Art and team will talk more about. So the reason we put it on this date is if there are some unanswered questions and things like that, obviously, if everybody's ready, we'll take approval tonight, but it does allow us some time to gather additional information, feedback to bring it back on the 17th if that's needed. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Art.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Art Krieger, City Director of Municipal Utilities. And tonight, I'd just like to give you a quick overview of some of the high points of this project. I know there were a few questions that came through today, and we'll save those for the end, and along with any others that may come up. So this project is focusing on the primary treatment end of the project, or the actual treatment plant, which is the front half, if you will. And it also has a component at the very tail end for the UV disinfection. It's the last treatment that takes place before the water is discharged back to the Boardman River. The focus is addressing aging and inefficient primary and preliminary treatment processes. So there are a number of those that we're looking to upgrade. We're also looking to protect downstream treatment, including the membrane bioreactors. As you know, those are sensitive parts of our treatment that are like $1 million a piece, and we have 8 of those. So this will help in the preliminary side remove some particles and things that could, eventually get to the membranes later, and it would be better to improve the upstream so that we send cleaner water to those membranes. Also continued permit compliance with Eagle's permit NPDES that is very detailed and a lot of requirements for. Jacobs manages that very well. And then, as I mentioned, the UV disinfection piece, but it does have an administrative consent order, which was brought to you some time ago, and we have some deadlines that were required for us to meet with replacing the existing equipment. And that's been pulled into this RFP and project for design. So this is just a quick overview of the areas that we're addressing. You've got coarse screening right initially when that wastewater gets pumped into the plant, gets out the large pieces that come through. Then we have grit removal following that, and then primary settling tanks. And then we have some pumps that elevate the effluent back up to a higher elevation. Those are the currently screw pumps. That's the primary effluent pumping. And then at the tail end, UV disinfection right there at the bottom. So the preliminary screening, it just focuses on like mechanical bar screens that are in place. They're aged, they require replacement at this time. It has its own separate building, and we're looking to upgrade that. The grit removal is, we have 2 east and west systems for that, and this is actually obsolete as well. We believe the efficiency of separating and removing grit is around 60% or less. So the new type of technologies that are out there can get up to like 95% grit removal. So we're looking to do an upgrade on that. This can reduce operating costs associated with removing grit in our further down treatment basins, and as well as those membranes, as I mentioned. Primary settling, we've got those large 8 existing rectangular tanks, and we're planning to upgrade those. It may include replacement of those with 2 circular clarifiers, but that's part of the design to determine what's best overall for cost effectiveness and long-term life expectancy and so forth. So we're looking to possibly go from 2 tanks, or from 8 tanks to 2, which could reduce energy costs overall. And those tanks have a scraper system in the bottom that's accumulating the sludge that settles out, and that is very outdated, and it's even hard to find parts. Currently, we're just kind of limping along on those 8 tanks and stocking up on some even manufactured parts that Jacobs has had to go for. The new primary header piping will be installed. That was one of the projects we did a temporary wrap on within the last 2 years to help get us to this point where we're going to be looking at replacing that piping. It's in poor shape. So we'll look at the most cost-efficient options there in primary settling, and also pumping. So the screw pumps are there now. We have 3 of those. We had one of them redone pretty recently, but the other 2 are in need of some major upgrades right now coming up. So we're going to look at a potential to put in instead of the screw pumps, we may be looking at submersible pumps. And that would be a different technology, but they've come a long way over time. So there's just a couple pictures. Those are the primary tanks that have the covers on them on the top picture on the right. And then there's 8 of those tanks. And then this screen, I believe it's one of the mechanisms from screening part of the plant, or that's actually grit removal. So you can see that's very dated equipment there. Still functioning, but it's not very efficient. So I'll move on. So the UV, looking at that at the tail end, there's some pictures coming up on that, but I'll talk about it first. The existing UV disinfection equipment has reached the end of its useful life. The ACO gave us about 5 more years to utilize that equipment with a small raise of the electrical equipment to get it out of the danger of flooding. And we did that a couple years ago. And so these units were put in, I believe, in the 90s, so they're getting up there in years. And we're just using out the last few years of their usable life. And we're planning to raise the hydraulic grade line or the invert channel in this project coming up, which will help us to meet the flow levels that come through, even up to the 100-year flood level. So that's going to be a big improvement there. The dates that I mentioned in the administrative consent order are listed there. You know, it was issued in July of 2019 and approved by the City Commission. Modifications of the intermittent modifications were made in 2021 to raise some of that electrical equipment up. And then we need to have permits submitted by December 31 of 2024 and the equipment replaced by July of 2026. So there's a picture of the UV channel on the far left, and these are the bulbs and the units that are down in that channel that treat the water as it goes by. Located at the end of the plant process. So what we're proposing, the process to go through to get this project completed is a progressive design build. It's a little bit different than a traditional design build. I'll explain some of the differences. The city used a design build for the membrane project in the early 2000s. So it's been done for a very large project back then. I believe that project was over $30 million, maybe $31 million, and it was a 20-year bond. It allows the city as owner to get input during construction phases, encourage interest among local contractors. So we'll have like a general contractor who can bring in local contractors and do their own bidding there to get the subcontractor work done. And the progressive design build team is actually responsible for the entire design, permitting, and construction of the project. And it is allowed in the SRF program, which is important because we're trying to, we've applied for 2024 funds. And the other part about this is different, say, for a progressive design build, it allows for streamlined design and construction approach. There's two stages. So you have the preliminary stage, and then you have the completion stage, which is where the actual construction goes on. Those are a little bit explained further there. But it gives us a chance to get up to Eagle permitting stage in the preliminary stage. Eagle permitting would be applied for and have 90% plans for design developed before you move on to the completion stage, which is where actually everything will get construction.
Kurt, I want to add something onto that. I know there's probably going to be some questions on this and a couple other things that Art's going to be walking through, but I just wanted to point out, particularly in the environment that we're in right now, I think anything that we do to streamline this project is going to be beneficial. I've had a number of colleagues that have reported out their big projects and costs are coming in very high. This project is going to need to happen one way or another. I don't see costs really coming down anytime near in the future. So I think that the streamlining thing is going to be important with this project and with the design build, and having one person kind of oversee all of the different trades is going to be of value to this project.
Thank you, Nate. That's very true. So just a couple more quick things on this, and I can talk a little bit more about cost too. So the contract for the preliminary stage, which is what is being presented tonight for potential approval, it's a contract between the city and the Progressive Design Build team, which we've gone through RFP request that came in. We had 2 bidders, 2 submitters, and it was qualifications based actually. And we interviewed the one, and actually both, and we picked the one that's presented to you tonight. It's Fleece and Vandenbrink with CCC Construction. They're out of northern Detroit area, but they have a lot of experience with these kinds of facility type projects, large projects. They have a very good track record from what we've learned about them. Then there's a second stage, which I mentioned is the completion stage, and that would be either a separate contract with the city or an amendment to the first agreement for the initial stage or preliminary stage. And they do provide a guaranteed maximum price before we would award that project in the completion stage. We're looking at clean energy, green infrastructure are important, city commission goals, city goals as well. So we've put that out there in part of the interview process, and this team that we're recommending had good qualifications and experience. They even had an on-staff person who had a sustainability type degree, and he's enjoying applying what he knows to wastewater. There's a lot of opportunity to save energy and use green infrastructure type things. Those would include like low carbon materials, consideration of those, energy recovery for ventilation requirements. If you circulate air within a building so many times, if you do that, you can do it in a more green way and use equipment that is with variable frequency drives and so forth for pumps and air moving devices. And also in the biogas recovery, that's a big one that we want to tap into. So it's all about feasibility and cost considerations, and we have that put into their tasks for doing this preliminary stage. So tonight, the recommendation before you is to recommending approval to award the preliminary stage contract for a progressive design build project for $2.2 million was the fee that they came up with for the first stage, and the company is CCC and Fleece and Vanderbrink. I believe it stands for Construction Contractors. I'm sorry, I don't remember. They go by CCC. Going back to some of the pricing that Nate brought up too, you know, we started this process in the project plan stage in 2021, where we looked at the 5-year projection of what projects would be critical for the city to do in the wastewater side and the drinking water side. So we went through that process with most of you who are here. The cost initially for this project was about $14.5 million estimated. So since 2021, we went through COVID, we went through shortage of materials and supply and demand issues all over the place. Now all this federal money coming into the state through this SRF program has just woken every community up in the whole state about the status or state of their own infrastructure. And there's a lot of asks for project costs and projects. Last year in 2023, they awarded about $1 billion, but I think the ask was over $1.6 billion. So it's very competitive. Costs have been going up in very alarmingly, inflationary issues, shortage of contractors that are qualified to do this work, and the flood of work that they have. So it's a challenge. And when we reapplied for this coming year in 2024 with the state, we actually bumped that from we went from 14.5 to 23 at one point, like last year, and then we actually went up to 29, and we're hoping that's going to be sufficient. But the good thing about this is it's a agreement that we can work through with a design build team, and if they come in high on lots of things, we can hopefully, the goal would be to negotiate down, but we could prioritize different things and try to bring it a lot closer into budget. So we have that ability where it's not so easy when you do like a design, bid, and then construction. I mean, the scope is pretty much set. I mean, you might be able to wipe out a couple things, but we feel this approach is a good one to work through these cost issues as well and negotiate during the process.
The value engineering will be a much more efficient this way.
Yes.
Art, I think you were starting to touch on this when you were talking about the costs and also how the state doles out those dollars. Can you talk a little bit more about how our project stacked up with some of the others and how some of their ranking plays out?
Yes. So Eagle has a scoring rubric, if that's the right word. They look at all the projects that were submitted. There was a deadline, I believe, back in June 1st for clean water, SRF. We saw a draft preliminary scoring ranking of projects. We as a city on this particular project scored 55 points out of 100. And with overburden status not attained in Traverse City, that's worth 20 or 25 points out of 100. So we
What's
don't
overburden?
Overburdened is based on household median income. There's a threshold in the state how we have that from the census data versus what the state overall level is, and we're above that. So we don't get any extra assistance or grant type money based on not being overburdened. And then there was another piece of that I might, water quality. If we had a impaired river downstream or the lake was, designated hazardous or whatever, you would get more points if you were doing a project upstream and your discharge goes into something that needs help. Well,
So our water's too good here?
our water is
fresh
great,
water's too good here?
and we're happy that it's
And
great.
what we're discharging is way too good. It's cleaner than what's going by, what's
Yes.
going down through there.
It is. It's very clean discharge. So we didn't get the points for
All right,
that.
just turn everything off and reapply.
I don't think you
No?
want that either.
No.
I don't think I
Mark,
can
what's
convince
wrong? You
Jacob
worried?
to do that, and I won't do it either.
Commissioner
So,
Werner, did that answer the questions you had on the scoring?
Yeah, it did, and just for everybody's information, I asked a version of that question, like what were the missing points, and speculating that it wasn't just the technical aspects, it was the big picture aspects, so thank you. Yes.
Right.
Art, the other question we received has to do with, it's a little bit of a more unique situation than what I'm used to, but the plant.
All right, let me go through the question.
Okay.
Richard had the question.
I don't need you to repeat for me. Has this been brought before the DPS, for the Department of Public Works?
Yes.
Have the townships bought into this?
They are fully aware.
No, I didn't ask that question. Are they bought it? Because they got to pay for 40% of this.
Correct. They have not signed anything yet, but they are fully aware, and I started that process back in 2021. I told them about the project plan. They had it at their meeting in their packet, so they had the opportunity to review the project plan. And then I've asked them all the way through this process to be involved by even inviting one of the members, if they wanted to be part of the review team or the interview team, and they declined. But they said it's a city facility, so you guys do your job and bring it back to us. So they've been brought into it. I attend those meetings. I don't think I've missed many in the last few years. Every month I go, and Marty used to sit on that board, but I've been going since he hasn't been there as well. And I bring this up almost every meeting of where we are in the stage of awarding the work, and we're bringing it to the commission, and we've got RFPs and
Well,
so
my
forth.
bigger question is, because I don't know when the bonding is going to go into effect, is this going to be part of reimbursement to us when the bonds get let, or are we paying for this now as we go forward? In other words, the team brings us an invoice, we pay our 60% of it, and the townships appropriately got to pay their 40% of it.
The
How does
way-
that going to work? Do we have an agreement in place, or is it going to be handled through the master sewer agreement?
My understanding is it'll be handled through the master sewer agreement, and we are applying for that loan for CWSRF. If we don't get that loan, we're gonna have to go to bonding, and they'll be aware of that as well if we need to go there. The county bonded the first project back in the early 2000s for the membranes. We have a very good bond rating as a city. I think it's better now than it was back then. That might have been the reason why they went with the county.
Well, another one is the county was the collection agency. We didn't have to go to the township, and the city didn't have to be the collection agency.
Okay,
So it made it a little simpler on all our parts.
sure. And
I
apparently that
happened to have been
option
around at the time.
may be up for discussion as well if we have to go to the
Well,
bonding route.
I'm concerned if we jump too quickly, the township's going to say, well, it's your problem. We haven't agreed to anything yet.
Yeah, Richard, I was going to ask the same thing for Lauren. I
And
appreciate our
It's not that I
answer.
don't think, they know we're going to have to do this, that we got a master sewer agreement. This is a capital improvement, not a maintenance problem. So it's divided equally by ownership of capacity,
Right,
period.
it is.
And it's a 60-40 split today. So
Can we
I
have
want to
Lauren
make.
on the record just for my peace of mind, because I want that on the record.
What's that?
That
Response.
they are obligated by our current contracts.
Yeah, and I'm trying to pull it up, but I can't get it in my K drive. But the master sewer agreement talks about the scenarios of when an improvement is bonded and when it's not, and how that all works. So that is in the master sewer agreement, and I can forward that to the commission too if you want to look at it
Well,
as well.
it's in our documents somewhere, you know, so you can find it. I helped her negotiate the last go-around on that one.
I believe it was 60/40 back then for the previous
It was
bond. I
less
think
than
it's
that.
45.
Is it 45 now? It's
right
55-45
Yeah.
So
now,
we're
that's correct.
55, they're 45.
That's
Yep.
correct.
That was the last
So I just,
conversation.
you know, I don't want to jump in here and all of a sudden we get into, oh, no, we didn't authorize this or we didn't approve this. I think the DPW needs to be making a vote and the townships need to be making a vote that they're going to participate. Not that I don't mistrust them, but let's get everybody on board before we go out and get ready to spend a lot of money. If I don't see it, I don't want to be out there and all of a sudden, well, you did it. You know, okay, so that's the first one. Yeah, I am a component of design build. This one I have, this particular method that we're going through, and it goes back to history again. When the city did their project back in early 2000, we had probably what I call the perfect storm. CH2M was able to handle the engineering, the construction, as well as the operation. It's all internal. It was a lot of fun to sit through their meetings because when someone one of the two would try to say, we're going to do this at the plant, and operations says, no, you're not. We have to live with it when you're gone. It was the way it went, and it was pretty well. A few years later, another design-build project took place, and it was set up like this. You had two entities coming together to be that. And a certain thing happened out there at a plant that a wall forgot to have some rebar put in it. Question is, what is the contract like between these two groups? We don't want to come in here where, well, that was your fault. You designed it. That was your fault. You didn't manage it right. How are we going to make sure? What's the agreement look like that we know that we're going to one entity to hold responsible, not the Fleece and Vanderbrink? I don't have any problems with them. I don't have any problems with anyone. Who's going to make sure that if something doesn't go right, which I don't think it will, but we're going to one entity, we don't want to be fighting battles on 2 or 3 fronts.
Right.
What's that agreement look like? Have you seen it? Between the entities that's doing this?
There would be one agreement, the way I understand it, between the team and us. So the team being one entity is how I
Okay.
understand it.
Have we seen that agreement yet?
We've seen drafts of it, but
Yes.
we'll go back.
We'll make sure
Yeah.
that it's
Okay, you've seen drafts of it, so we're approving something that you're not done with yet.
correct.
Yeah.
It's subject to Lauren's approval with
Well, okay.
substance.
All right, those are my two main concerns here. I'm a design build, I would advocate for it. But again, that's one of the things the townships may have an issue with because of what happened years ago. Not that it will happen again, but it may be sitting out there. That's why they need to be engaged and they're ready to go with us. And I don't want to authorize 2.2 million. Now, at what point does this get us up to the 30% design level?
Actually gets us to 90%. And permits submitted,
90% design
yes.
before?
But it starts at 30, and then we review and go through it all.
Okay, wait a minute. So, wait.
It's 2 years.
At the 30% design, we will have a price, we'll have a cost. I'm used to it. Well, you want to come up to the mic, please?
I have Doug Urquhart here. He's the project engineer with Hubble Roth Clark.
Okay.
Hubble Roth Clark is helping us through this process. as
Okay, I
our
understand.
consultant.
Yes, the progressive design builds is selected because that's what's approved through the SRF program, and it requires a Part 41 construction permit. So the way that process works is you develop 90% plans, and that's when you get your guaranteed maximum price. But one of the benefits to having a design build, you have the general contractor on board, so you should know your pricing sooner in advance with 30% of design. With the conventional regular design build, you start off with 30% design, and then you get your price. That's not allowed through the state. There's too much uncertainty. They won't fund that. So that's why.
Back that up again.
Because you have, with a 30% design, the contractor, you'll bid it out, it's design build, they'll finish between 30% and 100, which includes construction. Well, that process is not permitted through the state, through the SRF program. But this process, the progressive design build, which starts off with the contractor and an engineer through 90%, that price is enough to, it's a guaranteed maximum price that the state can provide bonds for. With the 30%, there's too much uncertainty. So that's the difference. That's the main.
So you're almost doing 100% of design work, ready to go to work. You got all your contractors lined up and ready to go. You're at 90%. There's very little risk involved. I mean, we're carrying in all the risk at this point, all the way up to 90%, because if they can't build it to that point, it's not that much of an advantage at that point. But if that's how we got to do to get our bonds, that's fine.
Yeah, and then one of the benefits to this process is there is an off-ramp that if the city is not happy with the design or the plans or the contractor's pricing or their process, they could use those plans and put it out for conventional design.
At what point?
At the 90% stage.
If I may.
Well, you're not moving very fast at that way, so anyway.
So I think, just to kind of summarize what they're saying, the work has to be done regardless. Whether we do it this year or we do it in 10 years, you're still going to have to design this. Now, I suppose the risk is if technologies change or something like that in 10 years, you could have potentially had a different design. But unlike some of the other projects that we're talking about, this work out here is going to have to happen no matter what. So I think the risk that you're potentially designing something that's not going to get used is much lower in this particular case.
I wasn't referring that it doesn't need to be done. It's needed to be done for the last 10 years. I mean, we've known it was coming. I don't think it's been the biggest secret out there. We've known it's coming. You know, pay me now or pay me later, you're going to do it. It's rather good to be doing it. I just want to make sure the fundamentals are in place, that we're going to get the best value for what we can get. You know, we're getting ready to authorize $2.2 million to get to almost 90% design. The last design build, that price was set at 30%, set and locked. Well, if you're going to take the state's money, you play by the state's rules. So that's just the way it works. So anyway, and we all in the city, by the time that happens, a new body will be making that decision. So that's fine. But I'm still not going to move forward. I'm still hesitant to do anything unless I know the townships are on board.
So in that light.
Can I? Yeah. No. Sorry, I was going to say, I wanted to kind of ask a follow-up question, I guess, to Lauren in the vein of what we asked. I appreciate that, Richard, you want to know if the other townships are on board, but that's, I guess, brings me back to my understanding is they are legally obligated to be a part of this and to pay. And they can, you know, that can get into certain things, but what I'm hearing from Art is they've been updated on this progress all along, that this isn't something we're springing on them and they don't know what's happening. I guess I would want to hear a little bit of, and maybe this has to come back to us with this information more outlined, because we have here everything from the utility director and our partners in this, but I don't see anything legal in here. What are the legal obligations, depending on if we're bonding or not bonding, and et cetera? Like, that is what I would like to see, because that is my understanding, is that contract that was originally negotiated by the mayor, and then I think it was updated a few years ago.
When I first got elected to city commission, we updated.
I remember that too.
Yes.
And
We did an amended and restated agreement,
Yeah.
2017.
yeah,
And it does cover the cost split for these improvements.
okay. So there's no wiggle room of, if they don't like it, they don't have to pay?
They're obligated under the master sewer agreement. to pay.
Yep, they were obligated the last time when they wouldn't pay too, so but that's all right.
Yeah.
Can I jump in to partly address that? Because I was going to raise it, not so much as a question, just I had the opportunity to be involved back in the membrane, whatever. I was the city commission's representative on the DPW at the time before Mr. Colburn was hired. So I got to see some of that goings on. And so to Art's point and the mayor's and Mayor Pro Tem Shamrose and the attorneys, yeah, the townships, the county, they're going to say what they want to say and act how they want to act, and not necessarily in a predictable way. And it wouldn't surprise me if they pushed back and said, well, why this year? Why don't we wait till next year? Because if we don't spend the money yet, then we're saving money. And that came up with the membranes as well. The whole like, well, it hasn't failed yet, so why should we replace it? You know, it's the scenario I used at the time of driving a really old car. Like, yeah, it might make it a few more miles, but it might make it a half mile and you'll be stuck on the side of the road. So at what point do you have to replace something that you know will fail? You just don't know exactly when it will fail. And that's what we're up against. And so with the legal aspect of that, though, I think this body could benefit from something, whatever it's legally called, but something in your words that says, yeah, they can push back on that, but if we as a city move forward, whatever it is, but somehow we can move forward knowing that, yes, they're obligated, but they could be making the argument, well, let's wait a few more years. Why do we have to do it now?
So I'm definitely seeing the city attorney shaking her head that, yes, we
Yeah.
can do that. We also have a meeting coming up, and I can actually be at this one. So I will make sure to attend the next Board of Public Works meeting. And maybe we can get on the horn with them tomorrow and maybe see if we can't get an item added to the agenda and see if we can't just get some sort of affirming motion or something that would maybe bring a little more comfort. I'd rather not start with a combative tone or anything like that. But we can, I think between those two steps, we can make everybody a little more comfortable.
But
Yeah.
my issue is we need to be working with them. They are our partners in this plant. And one of the things that made it so successful 20 years ago, everybody was on board, walking together, hand in hand, knowing we needed to do it. And there was no pushback, there was no issues, everybody did their job. I feel like, I just don't see, of course, I'm not on the Board of Public Works, so I don't see it. I don't know if they're there or not there. I'd rather them be with us instead of complaining that they didn't have a chance to have the input. And here we are getting ready to spend money that they're responsible for 40% of. And we're going to get loans that they're going to be responsible for paying back for 40% of.
Yes.
We need to do this. Hopefully they know we need to do this.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure the cooperation that was not there a few years back, which staff has worked hard to build up, is not ruined because we forgot to mention something to them. We need your support now. I know we're the management. We are, as a city, we're responsible. That's all. I believe that they will be there with us, but you haven't told me, yes, they're there. I don't hear that. So, not a legal document. Yeah, we can do that. Now we're going to be butting heads. That's not the way we should be working, so.
Yeah.
I might want to recommend then, based on this discussion, if you want to make a tabling motion until the July 17th meeting.
No,
I would just
I
note,
just want to see if there's anything else that needs to be added. We'll get there.
I don't think we need to table it, but I would agree to move it to the 17th. And Richard, I agree with your point of trying to bring people along, and so I like everything you guys have talked about checking in. I personally would still just like to see legally outlined. Most of the people up here
Yeah.
weren't up here when we renegotiated last time, what the percentages are, what the obligations are, just so we have that in hand at on the 17th.
I forgot we sold some more percentage to them.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
55-45, so.
What does Art need to get to prove that it's yes from them?
What? Just the resolution said, please move forward.
Do we have
Continue.
Time to get that done?
I don't know if we'll
continue
get a
the pro-
resolution, but
Or some sort of head nod to saying, yep, we know you're doing this, that's good.
we'll see if we can get Art to provide the same presentation that you're receiving this evening and see if we can't get some sort of motion or something like that.
Like, to me, I wouldn't want to put it on Art, but I'd put it on you, Nate. If you can attend the DPW meeting and just come away with some sense of the body language, whatever, like, yeah, this could work, because
be glad
it
to
could
sit
take
in the
them
audience.
months before they have a resolution.
Yeah.
To say yes, that's all.
And I'd be glad to sit in the audience if they have questions, so. Because you're the board member on.
And
We got it. We know what you're asking for.
Are we on a deadline?
Somewhat, yes, for meeting the SRF deadline schedule coming up for 2024, we would prefer to get started sooner than be under the gun all the time for every deadline coming up. So we have a little leeway up front here, but that's why we wanted to bring it to you on the 10th to get an idea what it was, if everything sounded good, get it passed. But if we needed the 17th, which it sounds like we need a little more information there, that's fine. But like, can't really drag it out for
Yeah.
another month. That would start hindering our schedule later for CWSRF.
Can I ask then, since there's this, I don't want to say a little bit of wiggle room, because I very much appreciate you're trying to keep ahead of things and not bring it to us last minute. Is the 17th the drop dead last one, or if there's possibility of some more official movement we could get to bring to us, could it be moved to like the 4th?
Ask Doug that.
You mean the first meeting in August?
First meeting in August.
Okay.
Isn't that the 4th? Maybe I'm making things.
No.
7th, just kidding, guys, the 7th.
It could probably go that long, but then.
Okay,
we're
I mean,
just
we'll try
kinda-
for the 17th, but let's say they're close to getting something formalized, but they need another week. I'd like to give them that, then
Yeah.
putting anybody on the spot of like, well, I have an email from this person, but they're waiting for the approval of a board or something, you know.
On the other hand, can we move ahead with this with an amendment that says, contingent on approval of the contributing townships or something like
Well,
that? Could we just add that?
I don't know
I mean,
why
I
I'd say
feel like we're doing a
approval.
playground thing. I'm not going to sign it unless you sign it. You going to sign it? No, I'm not going to sign it until you sign it.
No.
Are they going to want to know that we're on board before they go, yeah, we're on board?
I'd be happy with moving this forward tonight, with not with the contingent, but with the verification that the DPW, primarily the townships that are our partners in the plant, have acknowledged. I don't need approval, but I just need acknowledgement that they know we're moving forward. I don't know if you may take months to get that. I don't want to wait that long.
I'd feel good about
I want
someone giving
acknowledge-
us the right wording for that.
I
But
want
I
to-
would feel good.
Well, like that, the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute a contract with Commercial Contracting Corporation, Fleece and Vanderbrink, and this will not be electronically signed. In an amount not to exceed $2,200,000 for preliminary designs for the progressive design build of the preliminary treatment improvements and UV disinfection improvements in the Traverse City Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. Such contract subject as to substance by the interim city manager and informed by the city attorney with funds available in the sewer fund, and furthermore, that acknowledgement by the BPW and the township members is received.
Is that the motion you're making?
I'm good with that.
It's acknowledgement.
Yeah.
They don't have to agree with it, just got to acknowledge that we're doing it.
Oh, I'm saying that's her motion though, right?
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
whose
fine.
motion it is, I
That's
just
fine.
read it.
I don't care whose motion it is, that's fine.
I'll support that.
There you go.
Any concerns by the city attorney with that?
No.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, it's a 45-55 split now, right?
Yes.
Okay,
I had forgotten we sold some
Yeah.
more.
yeah.
I'll support that.
Well, you made
You
it.
made the motion.
Oh, I made,
Tim supported
and you
it.
read it. All right, got it.
Okay. And we have support.
Yes, that was here.
Is there any other questions? Okay. Anyone from the audience? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up this evening, we have Ryan Archer from Tower Pinkster. Tower Pinkster is the county's consultant that is working on the facilities master plan for the county, which we have a number of shared facilities with, and we've also, that's under topics for discussion.
Oh, facilities master plan, I was thinking of something else, I'm sorry.
And we've also engaged with them and added, I believe, a couple of our facilities into that project as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ryan. I would just note that the county has already received this update. We just weren't able to coordinate a joint meeting, so that's the only reason you're getting it secondary.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Like Nate said, I'm Ryan Archer with Tower Pinkster, design architect and planner. We've been working with county and with Penny from the city for several months now, going through a facilities master plan. So we know you guys are also working on a city master plan. The difference here being this is simply focused on county and city-owned facilities only. So we're not, we're really looking at, good example would be the building we're sitting in. So there's two parts to that. You know, there's some drivers as well. You know, so it's being driven by population growth, consequently growth of services. And while that might not be a linear growth in terms of staff, it's not zero. So we want to be sure that we're planning these facilities to be able to accommodate long-term growth. And typically with a master plan like this, we're looking at about 10 years out. Anything beyond that, crystal ball gets a little cloudy. You know, I think you look back over the past 3 years, I don't think anyone would have predicted that 5 years ago. So, you know, so we find 10, you see the old 30-year master plans and they're nice, but I think 10 is always a pretty good time range. So, two big pieces of the scope that kind of work hand in hand. So the first one is a facility assessment. And so what that involves is our team of engineers and architects walking through, I don't know that we got into every broom closet, but I think we've walked pretty much, you know, I know we've walked every building that's owned on the city and county in the list we were given as part of the proposal. We've added a couple since then as well that we've included for facility assessment. It's pretty wide-ranging things we're looking at, but it's the as-is condition. So, you know, the best example would be no first-floor restrooms in the governmental center. You know, so we're looking at things like that, conditions of parking lots, roofs, mechanical systems, electrical systems. Really just trying to do a level set to understand what's the condition of the existing facilities, and then we're working with O&M's Kimball Construction to provide an opinion of cost to actually do remediation and upgrades of those. Let's say a roof is failing. What would it cost to replace and upgrade the roof? What would it cost to upgrade bathrooms to ADA accessibility? So going through and noting all of those and then providing you know, a budget to support that scope of work. So that piece is the facility assessment. And what that kind of lets us know is things are in pretty good shape, things need improvement in these areas. And so we've got a draft review in, and so this is a page out of that document just showing condition, so good one to pick on there, parking lots. One of them has, you know, some immediate needs, it looks like, but we go through pretty much the entire scope of the building. Getting into the actual master plan for the facilities is really driven a lot by user input from all of the department leads. So we've sat down really kind of over the course of June and early July and have met with every county department and then most of the city departments that we wanted to meet with that are going to be impacted by the planning. And so that's going to generate a baseline program. So we'll have a kind of a tabular list of all of the spaces that belong to each department. Part of those user group meetings was really driven by asking them a series of questions, really kind of three big questions. This is kind of a graphic sample of the program. My really stale joke I've used over the years is in architecture school, I didn't know I'd have this many spreadsheets in my life, but it's a pretty good way to really organize the space. So once we've gone through all of those user group meetings, we've talked with them about, you know, where do they see growth in their department, just in terms of raw physical growth. Are they going to be adding staff? Are they adding programs? Is there anything fundamental about how they're doing, what they're doing that they want to change? Are they in the right location? And then also asking them what they're doing well. You know, that was always kind of the important question because as we're beginning to plan, we don't want to plan out any success. So things that are, you know, it's really easy when you're in these meetings to go, oh, well, it's, you know, the building's too cold, or I sit, you know, too close to Eddie and he drives me nuts, you know, those types of discussions. But we also want to step back and say, what's working well? What do you think we should make sure we maintain. I think one of the common threads we kept hearing was there was some good collaboration between the city and the county, and that was something that they want to see be able to be maintained. So yeah, kind of the list of people we've gone through and met with. Pretty small text. I won't list them all off there for you. We certainly have a copy of this available for you guys to look through.
Yeah.
But again, as we go through, we've kind of completed that first round of meetings. We're starting to actually get into the physical planning, so I'm going to be sitting down with the team back in the office, informed by those user group meetings, informed by the facility assessment, and we're going to start making some planning proposals about relocating departments. You know, maybe there's opportunities to relocate facilities. You know, the easy one to pick on is the jail. I think that by and large people feel pretty convinced it's at the end of its useful life, and the cost of upgrade might not be worth the investment. So that's going to be something we'll take a look at planning, and then again, when we're done with those kind of preliminary plans, we're going to go back through with this list of departments and review those planning ideas to give them an opportunity to feedback and say, yeah, that's exactly what we meant, or no, we didn't quite get that one right. And you know, we think if you look at it in these different ways, you know, that'll get us more of what we're looking to have long term. So that's really the upcoming piece of the process is we're not having quite as many meetings. We do have a standing, I believe it's bi-weekly meeting with Chris Forsyth from the city, and then Penny, and then Steve will be taking over as Penny retires. But we do have a standing bi-weekly meeting where we sit down, talk progress, talk anything we need to do to keep pushing the process forward. So that is something we do with some regularity. So from a deliverable standpoint, you know, the master plan really ends up being about this much of a document that when you print it is about this much, with most of that being meeting minutes, agendas, and the facility assessment, which is a lot of the bulk of the data that's used to support the plan. But really, we're going to want to go through, we talked through why we're doing it, so that in 8 years when someone picks the plan up, well, why are these guys thinking about X, Y, or Z? We really try and document the process as well so that people understand how we got to where we got from and what we were thinking at the time. So schedule overall. So we've just finished kind of the phase 1 information gathering. That really, again, walking through all the buildings, going through all of the drawings, making sure you know, we're finding drawings that, oh yeah, we did a project back in the back corner of this floor here, and so we wanted to make sure that was caught up on our floor plan. So there's some kind of accounting work in terms of drawings to make sure that everything's caught up, but I think we're in a good spot with the data gathering. And then again, we've gone through, a big part of that is those user group meetings. So the other piece of that data gathering is also energy performance data. We're trying to kind of benchmark where all of the facilities are at from an energy use standpoint. We've got a lot of that data coming in, and Kelsey Grossbeck in our office is our sustainability lead. She's been going through and looking at a lot of the energy use data so that we at least have an idea of how things are performing currently. And then as we begin to think about, you know, I would call it, you know, kind of the ROI operational costs of, you know, if you do build new construction for whatever facility, typically we can model how much better that would perform than the existing. And since we have that data on the existing, it helps with the long-term return on investment for that new construction, so that we understand that, yes, there is a capital cost to build the building. Operationally, we think long-term it can begin to offset that cost.
And sorry, is it okay if I ask questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Please
great.
interrupt. I get on a roll and absolutely interrupt.
No problem. So I appreciate that would be factored into any new building or builds. What about, again, let's use this place as an example. You look at this and say, boy, an easy upgrade though for X amount of money, and it would be to put in LED overheads or something, you know, any kind of a immediate one that we could do. And I ask this in light of the fact that there's a lot of the going to get the wrong, I'm going to get the wrong program, IRA money, maybe it's the IIJA, but there's some government money out there for us for upgrading facilities like this. So I guess I'm curious, is that going to come as part and parcel that might help us and the county with some of those, even if we're not doing a new build, shovel ready in the next couple of years?
I think that might be something we could talk about in the facility assessment side of
Okay,
it.
great.
Where we could look and say, yeah, I was sitting here looking at these as we were sitting here and realized, oh yeah, these are, they might even be T8s.
They're not the best.
Old.
And so and LED is a great example. The kind of return on investment on those upgrades now is measured in less than a handful of years. It really, if you don't have LED fixtures right now, certainly at a commercial level, it's a pretty easy upgrade to be able to invest in. So, but we can certainly, I'll make sure that we talk about that in terms of the facility assessment too.
Great, thank you.
And it might be in there, it's this thick, I haven't memorized it. Any other questions before I kind of keep going on? All right. So kind of the next several phases really get into the production, where we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the design work, planning work, thinking about, and this will be, working a lot with Chris and eventually Steve on here's the ideas we're thinking in response to what we've been told, and get some preliminary feedback for them, but really then develop a couple of options to then take back to the user groups, because we want it to be really driven by the people who are living and working with the space every day to make sure that they understand what's going on in their space better than we do. And so we want to make sure the plan responds to that well. And then really the idea having the report ready for approval in November. And so that'll be a big piece of getting that feedback here. Those meetings, I've met with some of the folks in the room already, and so you'll be seeing hopefully some calendar invites coming out for the second round of meetings here shortly. Talked about facility assessment, kind of talked through, these are just kind of a preview of some of the support graphics we'll have in the plan. As we've been doing data gathering, some of the things we've been thinking about are travel distances for services. How far is it taking to get places? What does it mean to be 20 miles from Traverse as the crow flies versus 20? And then also thinking about travel times. And so, again, thinking about a two-campus model, particularly on the county side, with the Lafreniere campus, and then the Boardman campus here. What's a 45-minute travel time? Obviously, last week notwithstanding. But typically we would plan, a Tuesday 8 to 10 a.m. travel time. That's usually when you see the most, see a lot of automobile traffic. But then thinking about how long does it take to get from point A to point B if you do need to come in person versus even a 30-minute travel time, which I always think it was particularly interesting. Depending on traffic and everything, you might not be able to get all the way out to the end of the peninsula in 30 minutes. So at least according to the internet travel maps. So, but it is something we are looking at from the planning standpoint. And again, just from a campus standpoint, some of the things we're looking at, obviously this campus will be a big piece of the planning. The historic courthouse is going to be a fixture. That's obviously something that we want to make sure that we look at, think about highest and best use, make sure that it's still a feature of this campus. The other buildings we're going to be looking at quite a bit, not to pick our friends on the prosecuting office, but looking at opportunities, how do you begin to develop along the river, so that this building, the people who work here maybe can use that as an amenity as well. So those are some of the preliminary planning discussions we've been having. I don't want to talk about too much since we've just gotten started and haven't had a lot of in-depth discussions yet on what the future planning looks like. But again, the other piece being the Lafreniere campus is going to be a big part of the discussion in terms of, particularly on the county, obviously on the county side, what might be moving out there, and then how do we begin to plan around that, because that big blue line is a gas main that runs across the property. So something that's got some easements and setbacks that we'll need to be thinking about. And then again, really thinking about reiterating those three questions. You know, what does the master plan need to address? You know, so, and then, you know, as you're sitting in December flipping through a master plan like you do sitting by a fire, you know, the thing we've been asking the users is, what do you need to see in there to have it be, oh yeah, this is a successful plan. This is going to help us do what we want to do better than we're doing it now. So with that, I don't want to keep going on. Certainly any questions you guys have now would be a great time.
I have just one more quick question.
sure.
I'm not sure if they're already in the groups that have been consulted, or if they're maybe that part of the next outreach that might include us. But is Beta, Bay Area Transportation, included in these discussions at all of, you know, you used the example at the beginning of this of our parking lot. We've kind of had this conversation before that maybe if you go by at 8:30 in the morning, it might look full, but when you go by at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's half empty, and for the rest of the afternoon. So is alternative transportation and working with partners like that part of what we're envisioning before we go and build bigger parking lots or anything like that? Or other partners that would help with some of those outside issues, I guess?
We have not talked to them specifically. You know, certainly, I think one of the things we'll be looking at from a parking standpoint is trying to not necessarily overpark. A lot of the things we'll be looking at from a planning standpoint, hopefully reduce stormwater runoff, reduce imperviousness. You know, if we can find a little bit of breathing room specifically on this campus, maybe by going a little bit more vertical with the development of any future project. You know, instead of a 2 or 3 story building, 5-story-ish plus minus. You know, so those are types of things we'll be looking at. And so by having a little bit more density, it allows a little bit easier time with parking, but also thinking about when you're planning a building, curbside drop-off. So that, you know, as you're dropping someone off to get services, you're dropping someone off and then you're going to park, you know, you're not, it's a little bit more travel in terms of site circulation, but from a planning standpoint and building use, I might not necessarily need to park. I can go drop someone off, and then if I've got to go run other errands or anything like that, I can keep going. But certainly also planning those drop-offs to accommodate bus traffic, transport van traffic, anything like that, so you can also maybe hopefully reduce some single person vehicle use.
Well, you'll get to interview us soon, so you'll get to hear some more about that.
I have 2 questions. It says 3 topics. I see 2 questions. Is there
Yeah.
another one?
Well, the third one's the topic, is, you know, you know, really trying to have to be the master plan be a success with,
I see.
with 2 support questions.
Okay.
It started off as 2 questions, then I had 3 things on there, so I went to 3 topics. But
As an English teacher, yeah, you got to scratch that.
that's what, I draw pictures.
okay,
I was not your best student.
And do I see you just starting phase 2?
Correct.
So you're behind a little bit. You don't
A little
expect-
bit, yeah.
You
It did
still
take-
expect November 1st?
we're still working towards November 1st, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other any questions? Thank you for the update. So we're looking forward for your final report. I know you've worked on a project special for the city as it relates to a couple of fire stations, which our report will be into the packet next Monday night. So on that.
Perfect, yep.
Then
We just completed that, and looking forward to talking more about that.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, just a final question. On the county side, so it's not dealing with us, but is the road commission considered sufficiently autonomous that it isn't being considered as part of this? Because, like, I notice our Department of Public Works is part of the city, but the body that maintains the roads and streets for the rest of the county is not included in this. And they have their own facilities as well.
We have not talked with the County Road Commission on this one.
They didn't opt into it.
We did talk with, I always get DPS and DPW mixed up.
Yeah.
The County Department of Public Works. We have talked with them about their facilities and needs as well, but we have not talked with the Road Commission specifically. That was not part of the original RFP.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
And our last discussion item tonight is regarding City Commission's policy regarding appointments to boards and committees.
Yeah, I can address
Yeah.
this item. So this policy was amended, rather, in 2021, and shortly after that, we revisited it just to do a check-in with the commission, and then it was promised essentially that around 2 years after it was approved that we'd come back, just to make sure there's a conversation. So I'm doing that. I don't know if the commission now wants to take a look at this, or if you prefer to wait until after the election, but I think that you might have some ideas on how things can be tweaked that are worth discussing now. And I did have a few questions in here. And I did recommend that the commission zoom in on sections 15 and 16 of the policy, which is really where the substance is. But I'm wondering first if there is a way that would work better for you all for scheduling these interviews. For instance, one possibility would be if you wanted to have a standing date that's just sort of held open. Maybe it's just before a commission meeting, I don't know, but just that's one idea. But I just was curious if you have any thoughts on how it could be better for you in that respect.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
For scheduling or just thoughts in general?
First scheduling, and then we'll get to thoughts in general. Yeah.
Scheduling first.
Well, I'd like to do after, because some of it just seems unnecessary, so we
Yeah.
might not have to schedule.
Well,
But
okay.
if the things that I feel are unnecessary, then maybe I'll weigh in on how the scheduling goes. But a lot of times, if an incumbent is seeking to be reappointed, I just kind of feel like we still, we form this ad hoc, we bring everybody down here, we all meet, and we still reappoint this person. And for the sake of everyone's time, I think if we don't see any reason to not reappoint, that we should just.
So, and I was, to that point, I was wondering if, can we request of the body that is needing the appointment made to it, some kind of a, if this
Yeah.
person is seeking reappointment, the incumbent, are they in good standing? I don't know what that might look like, but it's not just our time that's being taken, but it's the other people who are applying as well.
That's what I mean.
And so also, again, if we need to have a standing time, I think that would be more helpful, because it does get very challenging. And I think we've had some spots on some committees that have stayed open longer than would be ideal, in part because it was so challenging to find dates where the ad hoc and all of the people for consideration could be interviewed.
Right. Just want to make sure I understood your point about making sure they're in good standing.
Some, it's just some kind of a check-in
Attendance
from the chair of whatever committee or board, attendance or,
Okay. We always have attendance information. I'm not
Okay.
trying to get too granular, but I want to make sure I understand your expectations.
Yeah.
It can get a little sticky to check with the board chair on, how do you feel that board member is performing,
Fair.
right?
Very fair.
So maybe having attendance information is, that's very easy to
Yeah.
do.
And I don't think we currently get that.
We-
Not in our reports all the time.
It's
Okay.
sometimes provided, it's sometimes
Sometimes
not.
Okay.
It-
We will make sure that's consistent because it's supposed to be, yes.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, going back to the first part, I think that, and actually, after an ad hoc, when we were trying to reschedule an ad hoc, I had a conversation with some of your staff, and they put that out there. What if we did say, okay, we know, let's say planning's up in November, so we say October, second week in October on a Thursday is always going to be when we interview for the planning position. Not only then does the commissioners know, but then also anybody who's applying might know, and I think that could help them know if they're available for the interview or set aside a time. Because even though we did change the policy to say we want to have at least, a week or two notice, sorry. I know I just reviewed it last night, but it's already out of
that's
my
right.
head.
Yeah.
That's even more concrete. It lets us schedule, it lets anybody who'd be interested schedule, and I think that's a little bit more equal for people who want to get involved, but maybe it's, the interview comes up in August and there's kids' basketball tournaments and things like that. Then they'd know in advance of when that might be. Yeah, so I guess I had some thoughts about I agree, like, we could get the attendance and if there's any kind of formal complaint ever been made against the person who's reapplying, but above and beyond that, I think, and that seems to be what everybody was kind of saying. I wouldn't want to get too granular, like you were saying, then it becomes very personal. But I think if there's anything formal that could be included, that would be helpful.
I do think it becomes complicated, though. If someone has been on for 20 years.
Oh, well, yeah.
They may attend all the meetings and all that, but perhaps the chair would like some new blood. I mean, how,
Well, we're jumping ahead, so I was trying
Yeah.
to stay on to the question. I agree with you. I think that unless there's nobody else applying, then there should be interviews, because sometimes there are shifts, sometimes there are changes. If it's an incumbent and they don't have any complaints against them and they attend meetings and there's no one else applying, I think maybe like a
that's a different.
one-time auto renew, as it were, almost. But we found, because also, to your point, let's say 2 times in a row and they've been on and nobody else is applying, I don't think it hurts for the commissioners to talk to people either. I think I've been on ad hocs with several people here where we interviewed the only person, and we don't always know what's going on with historic districts or something. So it isn't terrible, but I don't think, to the point that's been made here, having everybody have an hour out of their day to talk to the one person who's already on and seeking reappointment and has no blemishes and great
No one else is.
attendance. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like-
agree.
Yeah. I think that the no other applicant part is key for me. I don't know that I would do an automatic renewal on somebody just because they've been on, if other people are interested. But I think that there's something there. Sorry, I guess
So-
we're kind of going down the line now.
Commissioner Warner, did you have
Yeah,
some?
no, this is great. I agree with what's been said. But to Mr. Wilson's comment, and I agree with that too, if there, I don't have like, if we did it this way, but if there was a way for, because it has to be a public meeting, so for the 3 folks appointed to the ad hoc to meet, but they have to have the applications of the applicants, and they look at them and they look at that incumbent and say, yeah, we're just going to reappoint the incumbent. Then they don't have to waste everybody's time.
Right.
But that's also an extra meeting of the ad hoc to be able
If they
to say
decide to
that,
interview.
so that's more, like, so I don't know, I don't know the answer, but if there was a way
That's,
to have that meeting to say, yeah, we've looked at these,
Mm-hmm.
because there are the occasions where somebody's been on there 20 years, and we're like, yeah, but they've been on there 20 years, and there's some really good candidates, so maybe it's time, but that takes a little discussion.
Sure, that was kind of where I was, I'm
And-
sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and that meeting of the ad hoc, because it's just the 3 people without all the candidates, would theoretically be easier to schedule.
Right, right. Yeah, I was going to make the suggestion about convening the ad hoc committee to discuss how to proceed. That was a way it used to be done for a while, and it's nuanced. Every situation is different. So I think it would be kind of impossible to have an overly prescriptive policy that really fits with every situation, right? So is there appetite to make that change where it's really when there's, when the committee is established, they can meet and decide how they want to proceed?
I think that's a fair balance. I mean, I would have been just good with letters, but I'm willing to
Is there-
compromise with what Commissioner
Sorry.
Werner just suggested.
Now that COVID's over, can we not do this by Zoom? Do these have to be in person?
Yeah.
That
The committee has to meet in person. The participants could participate by Zoom. That is an option.
But then it has to be evenly applied, doesn't it? Because we
Yes,
did
yep.
have this come up.
The
So if
policy
you Zoom
says
one, you
if-
have to Zoom them all.
Yeah, everybody gets interviewed the same way. So if you do any virtual, you want to do any virtual, you have to do them all virtual or none.
I have great sympathy for the staff that's trying to herd the cats. I think it's terrible.
Well,
I
that's
don't know how we
where,
can fix that, but if there is a permanent ad hoc day meeting time.
that's what I was going to say. Maybe it could be a combination
Well,
of the
if we
two
lobby
of
state
the
for
ad hoc
OMA
committee is
reform, then it
named,
could
and
provide
then,
some flexibility.
they get together and say, wow, we have enough applicants, let's go ahead and schedule it to the appointed date. Because again, I think that out there, thinking of staff, but also thinking of our own unruly schedules, and then you throw in that the public that's just trying to get involved, I really would like to, I guess I'm a big proponent, I'll just say that. I didn't realize that before I made the statement, but I think I am a big proponent of setting a date out there for the committees so that people that are interested know, it's on your application sheet. I'm interested in, library board and planning commission. Well, I know that these are the 2 dates of the year, or the rough estimate of time, the second Thursday, again, I'll just use it, second Thursday in October, that I'm going to be interviewed, so I can plan on that. Now, it might be that the ad hoc gets together and says, well, nobody else has applied, so we're going to just interview this person, or this person moved here a month ago and this person served 1 term, we're just going to renew them. And then they'd be notified that they're not being chosen to be interviewed at this time. But at least then it's out there for people to plan on. If we do have 5 or 6 applicants and the committee decides to go forward in an interview, we're not then doing the thing we've been doing so often now of, we've got everybody in line, or we've got 4 out of the 5, but the 5th person isn't there. And as much as we do read everybody's applications, it's really hard to judge somebody's resume basically versus personalized interviews.
Okay.
So I think that a combo of those two might be a good process to land on. I can think of the word process.
We'll give some thought to that. Based on the feedback, I think what will be helpful then is to send a survey to you to get some specifics, because there's also going to be circumstances where someone resigns, for instance,
Oh,
and it's unforeseen and doesn't fit in that usual rhythm that we
Like
might be
we're
able to develop.
encountering right now with the planning commission.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yep, I think that's great.
Okay, that's helpful. Do you have any general thoughts on how the process, beyond what's been shared already, the process could be structured better?
Well, I have to say that I do appreciate that with the new structure of convening an ad hoc for all appointments, it allows some protocol to be in place for a mayoral appointment if the mayor may perceive a conflict of interest with the board or with one or more candidates. Now there is a procedure that there's an ad hoc formed and at least 2 of the members can still function. But it does make me wonder, since a lot of the cases, those are mayoral appointments either by city charter or by state law, is there a specific role that the mayor has to play?
The role that the mayor has to play is, in order for the appointment to come in front of the city commission, the mayor has to agree to that. So the commission couldn't make a motion to appoint someone to a mayoral appointment, for a mayoral appointment without the mayor's agreement.
That's right. In other words, of course, the mayor serves on all of those types of committees anyway. So if
Yes.
2
Yeah.
said, well, I want to do this one, the mayor said, oh,
And then they can speak
Not
out at the
happening.
meeting.
Saves a step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, and then they can
But
speak
in
out.
my case where I had to abstain, I had to turn everything over to the mayor pro tem. So if the mayor pro tem would come back and say, nope, don't agree with you, that would have been the way it had to work, so.
Yeah, and I think that was I appreciate, Richard, by the way, I don't know if I ever said this at the time, but that you kind of set that precedent that the pro tem we handed off to the pro tem if there's any perception of complicated, of any kind of misperception or misconception of any kind of bias, that then that was kind of left to the ad hoc to decide fairly and through the process. And so I think that allows, to your point, Mitch, whether the mayor's on the ad hoc or not, I think it allows there to be a process. Going back many years before I was even on the commission, I heard people be like, oh yeah, the person showed up 10 minutes late for our 15-minute meeting in dock shoes, told me they had to get back to their boat and left. We don't have that anymore, and I think that's been a really good improvement in our process.
Any other closing thoughts? Anything that you've just thought, oh, I wish this were different?
I do wish that it were less work for your staff to try to wrangle all of us, and the multiple doodle polls always break my heart, because
Yes.
they've clearly tried very hard and given us many dates and times, and then when that can't work, I know how time consuming that is, and so whatever we can do to lighten that load, like as you were saying, for Linda, for the staff that has to try to make this happen, I think that's a wonderful.
A set time would be huge for
Yeah.
me. I'm in complete
Okay.
control of my schedule. I can do what I want, but
Sorry, booked.
more often than not, doodle poll comes out, I fill it out, and then by the time it comes, like, well, that was the case 4 days ago, but I've booked like a bunch of stuff
Yeah.
now, and so
Right.
that time doesn't work anymore.
I get it.
Especially when you're on 2 ad hocs at once and they both want you at the same time.
Oh yeah, that did happen once.
Yeah.
That was kind of my fault.
So I guess I would add to that, we've kind of given you feedback. I know you're taking notes and constructively. And, I guess I would say I would welcome you and the staff to sit down with what we've said too. And if they see anything that we missed, that would help them with the process, to let
Yeah.
us know when you send out the doodle as well. Or not the doodle, the
The
poll.
survey.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it'll be a team discussion. We've had definitely that already, but some more now based on your feedback for sure.
And I would like to say that having a recommended day of the month or a window would be better. It could be overly restrictive to actually have 6 p.m. on the second Tuesday in October as the fixed date because something else could come up. Or there could be limited availability. But if we have a general idea in advance, then it can be on our calendar, it can be on the calendar of the people that are applying.
Whatever time it may be, yeah.
I know where I'm at 7 o'clock on Mondays.
That's right.
And it really works out. So, I mean, I'd be fine with giving the city my whole Monday.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to come down here every single day for an
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to
ad
know.
hoc. Which has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if it would feel like too much of a marathon or if it's more
No. Yeah,
convenient.
Sometimes
so-
it's
makes
easier,
more
for working
sense. You know
person,
you gotta
sometimes
be
it's
here.
easier to just take a half day and do it all at once
Okay.
than, 2 hours a morning for 3 different days over a week and a half or something.
Okay.
Agreed.
Give me my Fridays.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with
Yeah.
Richard.
A previous place of employment, we used Outlook, and so all our schedules are visible to everybody, and I'm not advocating for that, but maybe there's a modern version of that that could save your staff from having to do doodle polls, like if
Yeah.
the next city commission, say starting in December or something, put 5 hours a week that you're available generally or something, so a very limited kind of Outlook schedule, and that way a staff member could just let the computer, like, find one that automatically works for the 3 people, like somehow,
Google Cal functions the same way.
something,
as like
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever's modern, yeah, I'm way outdated.
I understand your point, yes, got it.
Try to take the burden off the staff.
Yeah.
Put some on this body to say, hey, what,
Okay, but we also understand that you have lives outside of the city
right, and it
commission
could be
too,
changed. It's
right?
not like, oh, this,
Right.
I am always available these 5
Right.
hours, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be, like
Right.
you're saying,
something, I don't know.
could be a
what it is.
placeholder. Usually I'm available 6 to
placeholder,
7
yeah.
because I know I'll be here at 7.
Okay.
I'm concerned not about scheduling, but about the questions we ask. And I would really appreciate if perhaps Sean Winter would come up with 10 questions that he might ask somebody, or the Housing Commission person, that we didn't have to use, but that would give us an indication of what kind of talents they would like to, right now, it's goofy, the questions we're asking. And so.
Speak for yourself.
I just think that the knowledgeable staff, should have a little input here. It's not a script. We don't have to ask them. But if I had 10 questions that a planning director would be interested in, I'd like to know what those questions are, or the Arts Commission, or whatever.
Excellent.
That's a good idea.
Or if there's a Brown Bridge Advisory Commission versus the Joint Rec Authority versus the Parks and Rec Commission versus other things, yes, they all deal with natural areas that people enjoy, but there are distinct differences that the staff member that coordinates those boards would be able to say, hey, this is the more specific purview of this board compared to something else, so these are what we try to focus on.
Okay.
Also,
Great, that's
when
great.
when the Brown Bridge Commission met, we were unclear. There's a number that have to be from the county and from the city, and we were unclear who lived where. We should have had those numbers
Okay.
beforehand, so I do think there are a few things
And
that
Got it.
I guess that
Okay.
would apply to other boards that have
Yeah.
quotas or whatever.
This is helpful, yeah.
Like the Arts
All
Commission
that said, we think you
has-
guys do a great job.
Thank you.
We really do.
Thank you. But it's great to make tweaks, and so thanks for the discussion.
And I just want to say, since we have gone through the things we'd like to change, one of the things I have appreciated is that we have changed to ad hocs having the Google form as part of them for us to fill out, rather than people running around trying to fill out the paper and figure out who has it and
Right.
who's going to be secretary. So I think that's been a really great improvement, so thank you.
My thought on Linda's point with the criteria for membership and knowing who you can plug into what seats would be ideal on that Google form, and it's just right there.
Yeah, that is a great form.
Great.
And I can say that having experienced the new system before I got appointed, to get appointed to various boards, and then now that I'm on the commission and serving on those ad hocs, I do appreciate the clarity, and at least as far as I can tell, there haven't been any instances where the system itself broke. There have been, as we've just discussed, things that could work better or could work smoothly, but it's not like we weren't able to sufficiently make meetings and appoint people to the boards.
Great. Okay. Great feedback. We'll give some thought to that internally and bring back needed policy changes to you for your approval. Then look for a survey. And also, if you have any thoughts just in general that occur to you after the fact, please reach out. Thank you. Great.
Okay, that's all we have for our agenda tonight, other than public comment. So I'll open it for public comment. You just, please be nice and respectful, and you have 3 minutes.
There you go.
Is that close enough?
Sure.
He knows the
Be
drill.
nice.
Justin knows the drill.
I'm always nice.
Never
I'm
mind.
always that sunshine that I come every single time that I come here. So, well, Justin Reed, 630 Kaiser's Drive, Apartment 1B. I do want to say that there is an item on the appointment. It's number 8, removal. An appointee may be removed by the appointing authority at its discretion. I think that policy number needs to be looked at, like an index of 8A, to kind of expand on that, because of my experience with the Grand Traverse County Commissioners, and me dealing with the ACLU, and me kind of getting kicked off from the board of directors for CMH, and how that situation was handled, to where it wasn't done in-house. It was just brought to the county commissioners, and there was really no, there was no evidence of what they said happened. I mean, I said that didn't happen. I had the other person I was accusing, Nicole Miller, saying that didn't happen, and even the Wexford County Commissioner, who was there at that time, Ben Townsend, said that didn't happen. And that was supposedly being outside of the board of directors. And so, that never happened. But I'm just saying is that, that is something that is a situation that happened. And I think you guys need to take a really good look at that policy and maybe try to figure out how to kind of disciplinary committee or something like that. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Doug Kimball, 523 North Spruce Street, Traverse City. I listened to over an hour and a half of comments June 6th at the Planning Commission meeting, and the comments were overwhelmingly against passage of the proposed zoning changes. Planning Commission talked it over for about 15 or 20 minutes and passed it. In effect, saying, we're the Planning Commission, we wrote the plan, we love the plan, we're passing it. They were unmoved by the wishes of the constituents, because they care more about the people who don't live here but want to live here than they do about the people who do live here, pay the taxes, just want to keep their neighborhoods like they are. Because people buy into older, established neighborhoods, and they have the expectation and the right to expect that zoning will protect their neighborhood and their investment. They buy into a neighborhood because it represents the values and the quality of life that they identify with. But the Planning Commission cares more about the people who don't live here but want to live here than the people who do live here, pay the taxes, just want to keep their neighborhoods like they are. Almost any direction that you leave this town, you'll find an apartment complex being built. Not the ADUs, duplex, triplex that you're talking about. Apartment complexes are being built. They're more on the books. And these are the housing units. You want to infill the city, cover what permeable surface we have left, making it impermeable, create more runoff into the bay and the Boardman Ottaway. Because you care more about people who don't live here but want to live here than you do about people who do live here, pay the taxes, just want to keep neighborhoods like they are. So after the planning commission meeting, we learned that a city commissioner told them, just pass it as it is, and the commission will presumably ram it through regardless of the people's wishes. So I wonder, what do you find so wrong about staying a small town? Why do you care more about people who don't live here but want to live here than you do about people who do live here, pay the taxes, just want to keep the neighborhoods like they are? And why don't you care more about the people who voted you in than the people who don't live here but want to live here? Because when I came here about over 40 years ago, I came here because I liked it. I liked Traverse City, Grand Traverse area.
Mr. Kimball, I wanted to thank you for your comments. Your time's elapsed. Thank you.
Okay.
No, we don't have to. Anyone got any, George, you want to say anything? Okay, you good. Anybody else got anything you want to add?
I do. I want to call out Nicole Van Ness. You know, when you're in charge of parking, you don't get a lot of love, and she deserved so much love during the past week. She didn't want her staff to have to stay until after fireworks. She stayed alone to man the parking deck on both those fireworks nights, and others as well. She just worked so hard, and so I want to acknowledge that she really did a terrific job for the city. Yes.
One other little tidbit, the Rec Authority finally did close on the property, which is now Hickory Forest. So it's now in public ownership.
Which one, what?
The Rec Authority
Hickory Woods.
up there.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
they did close. So.
And a similar, really quick Cherry Festival thanks. I wanted to thank the Cherry Festival in general for running a good event. I think we all, some locals get very tired of it, some love it. It's always a blend, but I know I always appreciate our opportunity to walk in the parade. I would throw out what was mentioned to me by Commissioner Werner. It really helped us being by the steel drum, so we could pretend like everybody was as excited to see us when it was really for them.
I always
We'd
want
love to
that
be by
place.
them again next. I'm sure the commission, whoever may be in it, would love to be by them next year. So just throwing that out there, both job well done and think of the city when you think of the steel drum bands next year.
No, it doesn't have to be them. It could be Kingsley Jazz Prism or some other musical
No,
group.
steel drum band is not.
Steel drum played the whole time.
Yeah, it keeps you moving.
It does.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned.
I gotta talk to those. Yeah, I gotta talk to those two real quick about that thing that you mentioned at the top. So,
Sorry for ruining my average for
I know. I heard the canoe was out.